Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
It's just a phase I'm going through. Part 1. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the night sky. Hey James, if the moon rises at noon, what phase is it in?
Oh, that's easy. It would be at first quarter.
Oh, very good, very good.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, you're probably saying to yourself, how could the answer to that question be that easy? Well, we're going to show you how you can tell approximately what time the moon will rise by what phase it's in.
Sweet. Let's show you. Unlike the sun, the moon does not give off its own light. It simply reflects light from the sun. So, as the moon travels around the Earth, we see sunlight reflecting off the daytime side of the moon. The dark portion that we can't see is the nighttime side of the moon, also known as the dark side of the moon. The dark side of the moon is sometimes confused for the far side of the moon, which is the side that always faces away from the Earth.
The changing patterns of daylight and darkness that we see on the moon are called phases. It takes about a week for the moon to go from one major phase to the next. For example, when the moon is between the Earth and Sun, we are facing the nighttime side, so the moon's surface isn't visible to us. We call this phase new moon, and it's considered the beginning of the moon's journey around the Earth for any given cycle.
A day or so later, the moon has moved a little further in its orbit, and we can now see a small part of the daytime side of the moon. This phase is called the crescent phase. As the days pass, we will see more and more of the daytime side and less of the nighttime side. We refer to this as waxing. Waxing means to get larger, so this phase is more precisely called a waxing crescent. When the moon has traveled a quarter of the way around the Earth, it has reached a phase called first quarter. Here's how I was able to answer Dean's question so quickly. It's been a week since the moon was in its new phase, so it's now 90 degrees east of the sun in the sky. Therefore, we can now see half of the daylit side and half of the nighttime side.
That's right, James. As the Earth slowly rotates, everything in the sky appears to rise in the east and set in the west. The sun reaches its highest point in the sky at local noon. We call this crossing the meridian. So, if the moon is 90 degrees east of the sun, and if the sun is on the meridian at noon, the moon would be on the eastern horizon at noon. In other words, the moon would be rising. Ta-da! Well done, James.
Thank you. A day or so later, the moon has now entered a phase we call gibbous. Gibbous is a Middle English word meaning humped, so the moon appears a little rounded on the side farthest from the sun and perfectly rounded on the side closest to the sun. This is also considered a waxing phase as the daylit side of the moon is still getting larger, so we call this a waxing gibbous moon.
2 weeks after the moon was in its new phase, it will have reached the halfway point in its orbit, and the entire daylit side of the moon will be visible. We call this phase full moon. Now that the moon is full, it's 180 degrees away from the sun in the sky, so when the sun sets, the full moon rises.
That's right, Dean. The moon travels almost 2,300 miles per hour in its orbit. This west to east movement of the moon causes the moon to rise almost an hour later each day. So if the moon rises at 7 p.m. when it's full, it will rise at almost 8 p.m. the following evening. Speaking of which, we're almost out of time. So how about picking up where we left off on this topic in 2 weeks?
Sounds good, James. And in the meantime, you can practice finding the moon and where it is with respect to the sun.
And it's all easy as pie if you keep looking up.
Hello everyone, and thanks for sticking around for today's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy and I'll be hosting this evening's show. Taking a look at the warning chart here, the lit up area down there, that's due to the Mendenhall Lake and rivers are under the influence of a flood warning, and that should be out right now. It's out through Saturday morning, and that all due to the glacial dam and the overflow that's been occurring there with the melt and all that. So that's out through Friday and at least the first half of Saturday. Other than that, fire danger, spotty areas here of higher fire danger, but nothing like it has been in the past, and nothing extreme appears to be anywhere, so no problems there. And then on the satellite here you can see quite a band of moisture coming up from off the chart there right up into the North Gulf Coast. And that's bringing pretty heavy, moderate to heavy amounts of rain, Cordova, over to the Kenai Peninsula, on up into the Cook Inlet area, with 8,200s reported at Kenai in the 24-hour period ending at 4 o'clock this afternoon. That's one of the heavier amounts out of the regular reporting stations. Some areas probably had more than that, like up western Susitna Valley and other mountainous areas, but the heaviest rainfall amounts appeared to be in the northern Cook Inlet area from Kenai on up to Anchorage, 3/4 of an inch falling. Kodiak had about 2/3 of an inch, and then Talkeetna picked up 1/4 of an inch there. But some south winds gusting up to 25 miles an hour through the Copper River today, maybe even a little higher than that, and stronger winds yet, kind of some minor gales along the North Gulf Coast out of the east. In the marine areas there. The rainfall just not quite to Yakutat. A few sprinkles got in there, but just a trace falling there. And then clouds over the northern panhandle. You can see it clearing out down to the south for some sunshine there. And this really a lot of thick cirrus, but there were some sprinkles getting in, or showers in and around Delta, for example, but quite light. And most of the thunderstorm activity was from Dawson on east, at least up until the mid to late afternoon hours today. May see something break out here this evening, or up in along the Brooks Range there, where skies are mostly sunny, temperatures well into the 70s. And back behind the system, got the upper low right in this location. That's it right there in the upper clouds at counterclockwise spin. That brought some pretty good showers in across northeast Bristol Bay here and back into the Kilburg Mountain areas, moderate to possibly heavy at times. There's the back edge of the front, and that'll be just about pushing through Kodiak Island, but the wind flow from south to north here, so the eastward progression of the system very slow. In fact, another low developing there. That's going to be coming up tonight, bringing the winds up again along the North Gulf Coast, probably into the minimum gale category, and some brisk winds into Cook Inlet, possibly Prince William Sound tonight, and then they'll start falling back tomorrow afternoon. Out to the west, lots of clouds here from the Bering Strait right down across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. Occasional light rain and fog in this area here, both at Unalaska and along portions, especially on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula there. And then brisk northwest winds, 15 to 25, some cases even up to 30 miles an hour out over the central Aleutians. Occasional rain over the Pribilofs. Dense fog today, both at Gamble and Savunga, down to 1/4 mile visibility this afternoon. A lot of low clouds, not so much. It looked pretty good there across the entire Seward Peninsula right out to Tin City today, and also up to the northwest. Lots of clear skies along the portions of the Arctic coast. Was good VFR even with the brisk east winds there on the east side of the coast there, we got in some IFR from about Barrow and areas on down to the southwest. Rolling this again, you can see another batch of moisture here coming up, so that's going to bring the wind and rain in to the southern areas tonight, and eventually the whole mess will begin to shift eastward, but at the same time it'll also be weakening once this low center pulls up to the north, and the strong jet associated with that's going to slide right on up into the southeast interior over the next day or two. But again, today this is a plot with the showers breaking out along the outer edge here of the cloud band there with afternoon heating. But again, all the thunderstorms, at least most of them, off in Canada, areas of rain and showers here back to the southwest, with the first leading edge of the frontal boundary up into that area with a band of rain with that. Then it gets a little more intermittent, but lots of clouds right down into Bristol Bay and of course Kodiak Island with the rain, and then the sun over the southern panhandle. So tonight we'll see that kind of evolves, that low center, the other one up in here and weakening, with a few showers left lingering around the area up there, with could be a possibility of some isolated thunderstorms from now through this evening, and then should be over after midnight. A few showers here over the eastern Alaska range, but the next front bringing again the wind. Probably look minimum gales again up along the North Gulf Coast. Winds forecast to increase to 30 knots in Cook Inlet tonight from the northeast, and that all prefrontal winds as that pushes up. Rain heavy at times from, say, Cordova, all across south central Alaska, right up into the western Susitna Valley areas and along the eastern slopes of the western mountains there, and a little bit more continuous rain now. Should get into Yakutat, but nothing reaching the southeast coast, just some variable clouds. And then much the same pattern here, northwest winds 15 to 25 miles an hour, especially right through here over the Aleutians, lighter up over the northern Bering Sea, maybe just 15 knots there, could be 20 knots around St. Lawrence Island. And really no change up along the Arctic coast. Winds tending to become a little lighter in time each day. Still could be a little brisk there, but it looks like actually the winds will be the gradient pulling off to the north there. So it should be in for lighter winds here for the east side and northwest. Really, again, a day much like today out over the Bering Sea. Lots of clouds, northwest breezes all the way down to the eastern Aleutians, and with that some drizzle and low clouds at times for IFR conditions. Lots of IFR with the rain and fog here over the southwest. This dashed line, that's the actually the position of the upper level trough in this area. So south to north flow on the east side of that feature, again pushing this front up, but it's kind of stalled out or redeveloped, and the other one shifting inland kind of just weakens. You get these bands of showers and clouds moving through. But this front will keep the rain going, but it won't be as heavy by tomorrow afternoon as what was seen today, but it will be farther to the east. So it looks like some moisture will get into the western northwest portions of the southeast coast there from, I'll say, Port Alexander on up to Elfin Cove. Lesser chances as you move east toward Haines and Juneau, and nothing probably reaching the southern areas at all through the, at least through Saturday. And then we'll see for Saturday's forecast, again, this frontal boundary still in position here. Again, the wind south to north really holding it from making much eastward progress, but the narrower rain, less heavy band, but it's going to continue rainy there from Cordova to Yakutat at least through Saturday, but it won't be anything too heavy. And again, it doesn't look like anything will reach the central or southern southeast coast. You'll be in the partly to mostly sunny condition there. Less of a gradient out over the Bering Sea, so that means lighter wind conditions, a lot of clouds and fog and drizzle in areas from the Pribilofs down to the eastern Unalaska and the Nikolsky areas, possibly Atka. And then this low center down in here with the upper level trough just to the west, that's providing south to north flow, so that's going to keep a fair amount of moisture coming into Kodiak Island. Light rain at times or drizzle with periods of fog, and definitely cloudy skies. Look for some partial clearing to take place, hopefully over the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet regions. Scattered showers, especially in the afternoon over the Chugach, Talkeetna mountains, Wrangell definitely, and then the isolated thunderstorms possibly popping up here over the northeast interior, but nothing too widespread or definitely nothing severe. And then the heavier band of rainfall or showers back to the west, but that's even weaker than it will be tomorrow there, and a little bit further back to the west and up over the Brooks Range. And then we've got a couple of fronts coming down from the northwest there. The first one actually comes in tomorrow night and that's that one on Saturday. And then another one comes in and brings just a chance of rain, light rain here to the western Arctic coast. Very weak system, and really shouldn't see much of an increase in the wind at all with that. And back to the west, a very washed out occluded front pushes into the far western Aleutians there, but really just holding on to that northwest breeze there over the southern Bering and the central Aleutians. Temperatures today around the Panhandle, 59 in Sitka, 64 down at Klawock, 55 Elfin Cove, 57 Yakutat, 55 there at, I believe that's Cordova, where they had east winds at about 25 to 30 miles an hour, of course rain, 54 Middleton Island, 53 Kodiak, and a 60-degree temperature today in Homer. Kenai pushed up to 54, while Anchorage had 55. Up the valley, 57 Talkeetna. In the Copper River Basin, those south winds, 10 degrees warmer at Gulkana, 71. Over at Northway, Delta 67. Fairbanks up to 76. And some showers occurring or building up pretty nicely there in the mountains to the north, 70 at Tanana. And Fort Yukon and Bettles both had 73 this afternoon. Arctic Village was up to 70 at some point today, but at 4 p.m. they're at 64. Anatuvik at 64, Arctic Village 68, Barrow at 44, and 60 degrees at Tusuk. Otherwise 50s to mid-60s here over the northwest with 62 at Nome, 48 out there at Savunga, and mostly in the upper 50s, mid to upper 50s here over the southwest areas, but a couple of locations did push up into the lower 60s, Amonic and St. Michael, McGrath at 66, and mid 50s over the Bristol Bay area, upper 40s, lower 50s for the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, right around freezing there for portions of the Arctic coast, otherwise well into the 30s, 40s and lower 50s, some cases mid 50s here through the north central interior, and then mostly above 50, a few areas dropping in the lower 40s, Copper River Basin and the Panhandle right around 50, either side a few degrees tonight, upper 40s for the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Highs for tomorrow, mid 70s through much of the interior to upper 70s there as you get over towards, say, Eagle, and then cooling back mid 60s here near the coast, but much of the Seward Peninsula inland away from the water will be probably into the lower 70s. Definitely for the Noatak Valley, North Slope, 70s as well, 40s for the coast, and Bering Sea, 40s to lower 50s. For flying weather, lots of IFR here. Again, that zone of moisture pulling northward in the upper wind flow there. So socked in from, say, about Yakutat all the way back to the Kenai Peninsula, and then the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Pretty good chance of some IFR tomorrow. Diminishing as you head north there, but probably some marginal VFR. Could get into windy on the southern approach. Big swath of IFR, at least marginal, with areas of IFR out over the western areas here, and then just widespread IFR over the southeast Bering Sea right down to the Aleutians. For the Anatuvik Pass, looks pretty good tomorrow. VFR possibly becoming marginal on the southern approach in the afternoon. Otherwise, Adigan just far enough east to stay out of that, and you'll probably be VFR the entire day. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, and rainy IFR may be improving to marginal tomorrow afternoon. Windy though, VFR, but again off to the south or southwest. Could be some marginal stuff, may show up at times. Isabel, probably see marginal VFR, but Mentasta too far to the east, so remaining VFR there. And Tanita for the eastern entrance could see some IFR at times, otherwise marginal. Portage, IFR, either approach, and Chilkoot and White, VFR, and then tomorrow afternoon maybe becoming marginal. That would only be on the southern entrances, but it may hold off until tomorrow evening. And then for the freezing levels, you can see tomorrow morning, this is actually for 4 a.m., pretty good gradient here across the western Gulf of Alaska, and it kind of diverges here over southern Alaska. So that's the strong southerly jet in this area, the upper level low back over to the west, and slowly this whole pattern will be shifting eastward over the next couple of days. And tomorrow's icing as the front pushes up and gradually eastward, just kind of a narrow band of maybe possible moderate rime icing here, below 25,000 feet, with a moderate probably more under 20,000 feet, and then areas of moderate back to the west here, chance of icing anywhere in the shaded areas here, but at lower elevations in the cooler air behind the system. And winds aloft, there's that strong jet coming around, actually northwesterlies, and it takes an abrupt turn to the north here at about 110 knots, reaching the coastline tomorrow. Then it diverges as it moves in over the interior, but this whole jet max will be shifting northward tomorrow and tomorrow night and into Saturday. High pressure holding on to the southern panhandle. 9,000 foot winds, 25 to 30 knots, a little brisk here at this level from the northeast Pacific right up, right over Yakutat. Looks like the strongest winds will be, and then dropping back to lighter but still southerly over the panhandle. Northerlies 25 to 30 here over the eastern Bering Sea, and a little brisk too from St. Lawrence Island up through the Bering Strait. Lighter and more variable there for the Arctic coast. And then 3,000 feet, kind of a 3 low centers here, so light variable winds in this area. Not much more than light here, just 10 to 15 knots up to the northeast. And the strongest winds again here shifting eastward over toward the southeast coast, but still bending back to the east-southeast here, and anywhere from 25 to 35 knots, and then diminishing back toward Kodiak, northwest 15 to 25 for the Aleutians. And for tonight, or for turbulence, moderate chop at about below 9,000 feet or so here, near and in advance of the frontal system as it pushes in toward the southeast coast. May get a little choppy there, but more than likely up along the North Gulf Coast. Pretty smooth everywhere else. Maybe some mechanical light stuff here from Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, through the Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Could get a little choppy there in those channel areas where the winds may kick up a little bit, and then possible moderate turbulence here over the central Aleutians, but really nothing too serious at all. And for marine forecasts, southeast 25 to 30 knots here, probably dropping back to 20 knots for the southern panhandle. Over the inside waters, kind of a variable to southerly wind, 10 to 15 knots, so pretty light there. And then those winds will diminish probably tomorrow night, or actually probably Saturday afternoon to this level. They may hold on to small crafts through tomorrow night there, and then coming down under that definitely afternoon Saturday. Still 20 knots though up along the north coast, and then south basically 10 to 15 over the inside waters. And for the North Gulf Coast here, small craft advisories actually again tonight could see some gales here along the North Gulf Coast, and then those 30 knot winds northeast Cook Inlet tonight, dropping back tomorrow to pretty light and variable over the Kamishak Bay area, and coming down to 15 knots here for Kodiak Island, holding on to small craft advisories into the afternoon for the North Gulf Coast. Winds coming down east 20 for Prince William Sound, and then kicking into the first day of the weekend. This more of an afternoon condition here, southeast 20, coming out of the arm for northern Cook Inlet, but even the central inlet there looking at 20 knot winds from the south. Lighter though, southeasterlies, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, and east to southeast, only 15 for the remainder of the marine areas around Kodiak Island. Prince William Sound, again in the afternoon, may get some sea breezes there in areas up to 20 knots, mostly from the southwest, but getting quite light here along the North Gulf Coast in that marine area. For Bristol Bay, light southwesterlies tomorrow, and northwest 15 to 20 here across the peninsula, turning southwest up toward Sitkinak at about 15. And for Saturday, light variable winds now here for the peninsula, really laying down pretty good, and Bristol Bay not really much different, call it south at 10, and could see 15 knot winds here from that area from, we'll say Sitkinak over to Chignik. And then for the Aleutians, small craft advisories here from Adak all the way over to Unalaska, northwest 25, seas anywhere from, well, 6 to 10 feet, and then lighter winds out here, 15 to 20 knots from the west with slighter seas. And then that swings around. Again, this really due to that washing out front pushing in, won't be much more, you won't see winds much more than 15 knots with that, and probably hardly any precipitation as well, but northwesterlies hold on, but not quite as strong Saturday as they are tomorrow. In fact, coming down pretty light here for the Fox Islands, is 10 to 15 knots, otherwise 15 to 20 knots for the east central areas. And for the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, northwest 15, same forecast up for the St. Matthew Island zone, north 15 or 15 to 20, St. Lawrence Island, and then 20 knot winds here, Nunivak Island, especially we're between the island and the interior here. It gets a little gusty there, like Tooksuk Bay could see 25 knots possibly, and then back down to 15 knots there for Kuskokwim Bay and areas to the west. For Sunday, swings around southwest at about 15, otherwise west light from Nunivak Island northward to northwest at 10. For St. Lawrence Island, northwest 10, also pretty light wind, seas running 3 to 4 feet here down to the Pribilof, so nothing significant in the way of wind at all coming up out in this area. And for the Friday forecast up along the Arctic coast, again, tomorrow 25 knot winds, at least through the morning hours. Those could drop down to 15 tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, definitely lighter here for the remainder of the eastern and central coast, northeast, but down to 10. 20 knots here, say Point Lay. Enough gradient could produce some small craft advisories here for the marine zone right there, and then turning northwest at about 20 there as it heads in across Kotzebue Sound. And for Saturday, lighter winds yet, still northwest, but not quite as brisk. Definitely lighter, more westerly, and then things getting pretty light and variable here for much of the Arctic coast, southwest at 10 there on the west side, and then just 5 to 10 knots here, really laying down for the central coast all the way over to Demarcation Point. And looking at tonight's weather again, the next system coming north, so gales and rain heavy at times up to the North Gulf Coast, eventually inland. And again, Cook Inlet northeast coming up to 30 knots tonight and then dropping back tomorrow. Regional low up here weakening, still good for some showers though over the west central interior. Otherwise not too bad to the north, pretty dry to the west here, a lot of cloudiness out over the Bering Sea and moisture with IFR along the eastern Aleutians right up into Bristol Bay. We'll see tomorrow that front weakens but edges its way eastward. A couple of waves here developing on the front, really quite weak though, but look for some rain to push into the northwest panhandle. Rain continues but not as heavy, kind of the amounts diminishing throughout the day as rainfall rates, showers inland, isolated thunderstorms mostly over toward the eastern border, and then Saturday drier over the southern interior.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.